and families well. So just one thought. Oh, there's your sweet family. For those people who may watch this and you're coming from a foster care or adoptive lens, which is what this cause network is focused on, it's really fascinating to note the large amount of kids in foster care and adoptive situations that are special needs. And that's maybe not, I don't know that everybody realizes that going into foster care, but this is like an added layer, right? So we know that families with their biological kids with special needs need special accommodations, and we can serve them so much better. In fact, I don't know the stats, but I've heard that that's the largest unreached people group in the US, is families with kids who have special needs, because it's really hard to get to church and to do all the things that we sort of require people to do on a Sunday morning. But then additionally, you layer that in with trauma or moving around from foster care, and you're just adding on to kind of yeah, like compounding issues. So anyway, that's why we're focusing on it in the foster care advocacy network, because it's really hard to separate, right? Like even kiddos who come into our homes who may come with nothing identified, pretty quickly we can identify, oh, there's something maybe going on here. So really good to raise our level of awareness and all of this. So Amy, why don't you start and tell us a little bit, yeah, about your family and what we can learn.
Absolutely. Thank you. I was a little gung-ho on the picture. I didn't know you were going to give me such an amazing introduction there. So thank you. So my husband and I, about, a year into our marriage, we were like, you know what? I feel like we really need to do foster care. And a lot of people were like, no, probably bad idea. And so I would maybe agree a little bit. At the first was a little rough. But over the years, we fostered for 15 years. We had 17 kids, which was a very small amount compared to some of my friends. But what I recognized was, as we were taking these kids in, that trauma and special needs and disabilities within the foster care system were going hand in hand, but no one was talking about it. And I felt like it was kind of one of those things where, like, do we really? I don't think we really understood, especially when I started, how those two are integrated. The trauma can cause, you know, disabilities in certain ways. And so I think as we were, growing our family, we were seeing, okay, this is much more than just foster care. This is learning disabilities. This is trauma. This is showing up in behaviors. And so I'm having to also do ministry. And so what happened was as we were doing ministry together and I had my family, I was not able to be a children's pastor and be a mother to children with disabilities, um, or even foster care slash however you intertwine that word. And it was not working. I was not able to do my job to, serve the families at our church because I was constantly managing behaviors and disabilities and that kind of thing. And it was just a lot. And so I thought, you know what? There's got to be something that we can do to serve families because I know that I'm not the only one, right? So we developed something called Oasis to kind of um, put boundaries and support into my life. It started to be just my life, but actually, as we opened up a little bit, we saw that there was actually many families that were needing support and care. So a little bit about my family here. You see, I adopted seven. My oldest son is not living with us currently, which he's 22, so that's fairly normal. Um, but he's had a rough time and he's not with us right now. But the rest of my kiddos here, I have two that have autism. I have two that have major cognitive delays and um, learning disabilities. Then I have my little guy in the middle there. He is visually impaired, cerebral palsy, epilepsy, nonverbal, and that's all from, he was he was born healthy. And he came into foster care because of the the trauma that he experienced. So his story is sad, but also redemptive, in the sense that he was able to he's able to teach us and show us the things um, of how the Lord just loves. And I'll get more into that. But anyway, so these are my kids. These are kind of us. We are a force to be reckoned with. We love deeply, but we are a lot. And so this picture right here is why I started Oasis. My kids desperately needed support, and I needed support to be able to minister to the families at our church. So um, with that, just a few things. I'm not sure if you're aware, but 90% of special needs families don't go to church. They just don't go for many reasons because it's hard. We know that. Behaviors are hard, disabilities are hard. And when people don't understand what's actually going on, I mean, when we first were foster parents, my either I or my husband had to attend with my oldest son because the teachers could not handle his behavior. So uh, a lot of families just don't come because it's just too hard and too much and too all the things, which I'm sure most of you guys understand that. And then this other quote here really was one of the leaping points for me in doing the ministry is that many of the kids with special needs correlate their understanding of Jesus for them through relationships that they form at church. Because as a mom of special needs, it takes a lot out of you. But when someone else loves on you, there's just something different that kind of connects. And so I think that really springboarded how I wanted to serve families well in the church. And so, you know, you guys can already know what special needs ministry is and why it's needed for those two reasons right there for one. But we just need support, and I was really wanting to be able to do that as best I can. So how we did that was we started asking questions. We asked questions like in our families, are there families that need support? And then we looked around and we saw that probably 9 to 10 of our kids had special needs of some sort, and they did need support. But we were already kind of serving them without understanding the full, understanding of what they needed. Um, do they need, nights that are specific for them, or was it support groups? Was it just in the classroom in general? So asking questions. And then another big one is asking the staff, like, do we have people in our church already that have a heart for special needs or have a heart for foster care kids that need a little extra attention? Um, Finding those people and asking those people to come alongside and support your ministry or your kids in that way was huge. And then we were asking questions like, what does scripture tell us to do? Like, we don't want to just do another thing. We want to do what the Lord has called us to do. And obviously we know over and over and over the Lord's to take care of those that need it. And so, and did Jesus model it? Of course he did, right? All the things, all the stories that we could go in and share those. So there's the questions is how we started the ball rolling. And then we just kind of went from there. When we are talking about special needs ministry within the context of a church, I think some things get missed. And this is kind of why I kind of use these words to help people understand what it really means. I think acknowledgement in the sense of, hey, yeah, they might learn differently, they might feel differently in the sense of not understanding what they need. With within foster care, understanding that there's going to have some times where behaviors are going to pop up, and just acknowledging those things are hard. And I think that sometimes we want to shy away from it because it's kind of scary or the unknown. But I think it's super important that it's okay to acknowledge it. It's not okay to shame it. So I think there's a difference. And so that's why we want to, have this inclusion. All of my ministry is really to include. I don't really love separating kids out unless it's, a safety problem, and that's a whole nother thing, which I'm, with kids in the foster care system, there's always some types of behaviors that may be not safe. So there's always conversations to be had. But I think that inclusion, just having the mindset of inclusion, 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 is what Jesus would do over and over and over. And so I think it's incredibly important to have that mindset as we kind of like talk about special needs within the church. And then education, people are scared of what they don't understand. And I think that's what I have um, in, encountered the most within our churches is people just don't have the education of how to help or support or draw boundaries or any of those things. And so when they don't understand, they kind of, put their hands up like, I don't think I can help with this. So educating our people was incredibly helpful and life-giving. And there's, that there's power in knowledge. And so I think not shying away from it is super important. And we do that through education. And then acceptance is just kind of just basically, hey, these, like Natalie said, they are the most unreached. So the acceptance of them into our spaces is so vital. I think it brings life. And I know that it sounds scary and it's hard and it's all those things, but I think living like Jesus would in those spaces is super, super um, healing for those kids that have maybe been rejected. So acceptance is huge in our ministry. Obviously, the support and the love that we want to display um, is incredibly a foundation that I think that Jesus modeled so many different ways in his ministry. So I try to as well, in which I'll tell a little bit more about what support might look like or what how it kind of plays out. This is our mission. Basically, you know, we're here to serve as a safe haven for the children and the parents, to assist the families in leading them closer to Jesus. It functions to show children that Jesus loves them no matter exactly how they are. They want that he wants a relationship with them regardless of how they perform. I know that sometimes in foster care, performance of our kids is something that is important, but at the same time, Jesus loves them in that space, right where they're at. No matter how hard their behavior is, no matter how hard their disability is, that Jesus doesn't equate that with, loving on them and caring for them. So that's kind of how we push our mission into our ministry, just being that in that space. So Oasis actually means something. I didn't just throw that out there. Opportunities means, giving opportunities for ministry to take place for our people who want to serve alongside, and for our families and for our kids that need an extra attention in certain areas. We recognize abilities that they have. If they are great at singing, we push that and push that and push that. We don't make any deal that, maybe they are in a wheelchair or they are not speaking clearly or any of those things. We still let them integrate. If they don't speak well, they can still be on the worship team. That's just a thing that we do because we don't feel like Jesus doesn't care, right? So we don't care. So we don't care how it sounds because Jesus wants us to love deeply. And I feel like that's one way we can do that. It is specialized in the sense that each child is different. Each behavior is different. Each kiddo in foster care is different. Each special need is different. So we specialize to that each child, their care. So some might have a plan. Some might have a behavior plan. Some might have a buddy. Some might not need any assistance. So it's all specialized to each child individually. And it's super intentional. If we find out what they like, what they're good at, we really strive to help them develop that. So if they're good, if they love singing and they want to do that, we want to, continue to let them serve in that way or be a part of the teams in every way that they can. And then obviously support. And that goes, for the child, but for the families that struggle to come to church because it's another thing that maybe they feel rejected from. And we don't want to be in that space for them. We want to be able to help them and support them and love them, just like Jesus has taught us. The goals that we have for them is for the kids to enjoy their time, to relax and be able to worship. And, importantly, if they're not safe, it's not going to work, right? So safety is huge for us as well. For the parents, I think me as a special needs mother, leaving my child behind, knowing that they're safe, I was able to worship. And that can't be said for all places. And unfortunately, that's why they don't come to church, is because they don't feel like their children will be safe or look after, or that we can handle the behaviors, those kinds of things. So for the parents to feel safe, to enjoy, and to have that clear communication between us, I think that is huge. If they're able to clearly communicate their needs of their children, and then the hard times and the spaces, and we're able to have that dialogue, that also makes it doable. And sometimes we have to dial back and say, hey, we might need to revisit this. And then for my team, like buddies and my staff or my church in general, that they enjoy spending time with these kids, and that they have clear expectations about what I need and what the child needs for them to be successful. And then obviously we want this to be more than just showing up on a Sunday as a warm body and serving a little kiddo, but to actually to develop a relationship with. Because I think, again, it's sometimes lack of knowledge is scary, and kids are scary to some people. And then if you throw in special needs and foster care, that's just layer upon layer that people may be a little bit afraid of. But I think having the conversations and being clear and developing the boundaries will help people engage and get over those fears, and be serving where Jesus would want them to be. So I just think that that's huge. So just a few stats here, I think sometimes, unfortunately, in the church with foster care and special needs, we want to look the other way. Not everybody. Obviously, you guys are here for that, but sometimes people don't realize the impact that it is in our nation and in our cities and in our schools. And it's not going away, right? And I think the more that we learn about health and the things that are being developed, we're going to just see that the disabilities are a part of every avenue that we walk, right? So I think just being aware of how many people, so if you're saying 1 in 4 people have some sort of disability, I think that it's really wise for us to start paying attention and having conversations and serving our families well, because it's part of that space that Jesus desperately wants us to reach into and out of our comfort zone. So here's just a few stats that hopefully will be impactful and make us think a little bit about what we're facing in our world. And so the things that I have heard from people who have come into the church or not come into the church is that they fear that the staff will not be able to take care of their child. So that was where the education piece comes in. They don't feel accepted, they feel rejected. There's a big piece of that. Even in my own church, previous to where I'm at now, there was a lot of, staring and not understanding and not asking the right questions. And so I do feel that I have felt that rejection before. So I understand when people come to me and say, I just don't feel accepted anywhere. And I'm sorry for their experience. And I'm like, I really think that the church has failed in, unfortunately, some spaces with foster care and special needs families. And I think that we can do better. So that's kind of my drive for pushing out how we can educate and have hard conversations. They're afraid that they're going to be a burden to the church. I've heard that more than I have not. And I hate that that's a feeling that they have. they've been asked to leave the church. And I cannot fathom. I've never been asked to leave, and I can't fathom being asked to leave. I think that breaks God's heart. Um, so because of these statements, I try my hardest to help anybody that ever has a question or a thought or a problem, to help them work out what it looks like to serve these families better. Um, a big piece of this is that, and I know that foster families feel the same thing, is that piece of isolation. Um, and I think that is an attack of the enemy, right? Isolation, to keep them separate, to keep them, oh, you're all alone, all those things, and to really, um, so I want to combat that with, you know, being inclusive, and that practice of including people that might look different, might sound different, might have different experiences, and be open-handed to them, and really learn from them as much as they could learn from me. So I think that having that open mind, that really, what does inclusion look like for our churches? What does it look like for our relationships? I think that is where some of these conversations within our churches need to be started or had or continued. A big piece of this is also Jesus did all the things, right? He did so many miracles, but they impacted, people with disabilities. And I think I laugh when I say Jesus was the first special needs pastor. I think that we don't view it that way, but in reality, he loved them well. And I just want to try, to spread that information to everyone, like that concept. We know that he healed people. We know that he was with people that were hurting. We know that he also he didn't heal everyone, right? But he did encounter and love them well. And so I think that's, incredible um, way to push ourselves out of our comfort zone to love on these people. Um, and then, so how do we start? How do we get going? I think the two things that really helped us start is that we had support from our leaders. Um, they were supportive. They, asked what we needed. How can we help? What do we need to do? Those types of things. And then I found, two or three people that really had a care or a love for people with special needs, even with foster care, the interest or that skill set that I could kind of build on. And then I took people who had no idea what was going on, and I helped them, and I gave them things to read and videos to watch, and just kind of helped them walk through this to help me keep this ministry going, so that we could support and that I could minister to people as well in my role as a children's pastor. So that's kind of how we got that started, in all of the things. And then this last couple of pieces here, I think it's huge that we have some training and education within our churches, within our staff, within our leadership, to be knowledgeable, to understand what it means to be inclusive of these people, and not be scared of it, and not be distracted by it. I think sometimes that my son, my my son's at 16, he's got autism, and he um, does a lot of stimming, and it's loud, but it's also in response to his feelings with Jesus. So if he's in worship, he will be a little bit louder than others, but it's a response. And for the church to be acceptance of maybe a different noise that they're not used to, I think has really been eye-opening for me, to see my church love on my son, even though he worships differently. And I think at first I was embarrassed, and the Lord quickly reminded me that Jesus, I am not embarrassed by his responses to me in a different vocal way that maybe not everybody does. And so I was, the Lord's teaching me through him and all the things. I'm like, okay, wow, this is for our church to get this and for our church to accept this and not be distracted by it and be upset by it, I think was incredibly, um, just the love of Jesus was just so dear to my heart when I was recognizing what was happening. Um, and then obviously the conversations, who we need to talk to, like in the leadership, how do we start this? If this is something we want to do within our church, what training needs to take place? Do you need to get a hold of me and we need to do something online, or I need to send you all my resources? What does that look like? Um, and the more that you have knowledge and education, that stability, that foundation, it won't be as scary and it will be life-giving. And so I think it's super, super important that the education and the training happens. I have one statement here that I think is vital to the church, special needs, foster care, all the things. Sometimes families come in and we don't have the right support in place, and that's real, and that's hard, and we don't want to ever send someone away. So this is the conversation that I have. If someone comes in and I can't serve them in my special needs ministry, I say it's not a no, but it's not right now. And that's just meaning that I need to find the supports, I need to find the education, I need to find a nurse, I need to find whatever it is that I need to support. And I think it's hard to say those things because in the church, I'm talking about inclusion, inclusion, inclusion. And then all of a sudden you're like, wait a minute, you're saying no? I think our limitations and safety and the Lord asks us to be use wisdom. And so I don't want to put anyone, at jeopardy or not serve them well. And then they end up getting hurt because I said yes and I wasn't able. So I always tell the families it's not a no. It's just not right now. I'm not able to serve. Please help me to figure out how we can do this. Like, what do we need? What do you use? How do you do this? So having those conversations in the real time and honesty has really um, been a life-giving thing for those families. Because I never want to send anyone away, even though, you know, things might be hard or scary or unknown. So that's my big at the end. Even though I say all this, there is this one piece where we have to use wisdom and we have to be wise with what the Lord has given us. And if we don't have it, it's okay to say we don't have it, and we can try to really come alongside them and support them the best that we can. So that's real. That's hard. There's that. Here are my three main resources when I go into churches or I help churches talk about special needs. Is I use these three books. They're well written. They're very detailed oriented. They give you all of the things and things you don't even have never thought about. So, yeah, those are great and amazing. And there we are. It was like a whirlwind, I'm sure.